In the fast-moving world of news, it's easy to miss the meaning between the lines. That's where we come in. Each episode, we take real headlines from Newsline Philippines and let AI break them down. Not just the what, but the why it matters.
Okay, let's dive right into what looks like a major shakeup hitting the Philippine government.
So, definitely significant. We're looking at a Newsline Philippines article here, dated May 22nd, 2025.
Right, and it details some really big moves.
It does. It lit out how the administration responded to some recent developments.
So our mission here really is to cut through the noise. Let's unpack the essentials of what happened, maybe why it happened according to this source, and what this whole government reset thing might signal.
Exactly. Let's pull out the key nuggets you need to get a handle on it quickly.
Okay, so what was the big event? What actually kicked all this off according to the article?
The core action, the main event, was President Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. requesting courtesy resignations.
Okay.
And not just from a few people, from every single one of his cabinet secretaries.
Every single one.
And many key sub-cabinet officials, too.
Wow. That is comprehensive. What was the context? Why suddenly ask everyone?
Well, the source makes it pretty clear. This happened immediately after the administration's performance in the recent midterm elections. And the article, it doesn't pull punches. It describes that performance as underwhelming.
Underwhelming. Okay, so the timing definitely seems linked to those election results then.
It appears so, yeah.
And how many people are we talking about here? You said cabinet and sub-cabinet.
We're looking at roughly 30 top officials. That's the number cited.
30. And did they comply? How quickly did this happen?
Apparently, very quickly. According to Newsline Philippines, by early afternoon on May 22nd, the day the article was published, almost everyone had either submitted their resignation or indicated they were about to.
Okay, so this term, courtesy resignation, you hear it sometimes. What does it actually mean in this kind of situation? Is it just a polite way of saying you're fired?
It's a bit more nuanced than that, actually, and understanding it is kind of key here. A courtesy resignation isn't necessarily the official admitting they did poorly or anything. It's more of a mechanism, It gives the president maximum flexibility.
Flexibility how?
It gives him the political space to make changes without maybe having to single people out publicly for specific failings. When they offer the resignation this way, they can frame it as loyalty, supporting the president's vision for a reset.
So it avoids the potential drama of individual dismissals.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It puts the ball entirely in the president's court to accept or reject. It streamlines the whole process for him to reshape the team.
Makes sense. And the president himself, he gave a reason for this. The article mentions a bold reset.
He did. He framed it very strongly. The quote was, "This is not business as usual."
Strong words. What was the stated goal then behind this bold reset, especially right after those underwhelming election results?
The president's stated aim, as the article quotes him, is to realign government with the people's expectations.
Okay, linking it directly to the public.
Yes, and specifically to the polls. He said, "The people have spoken, and they expect results, not politics, not excuses. We hear them, and we will act."
So very much positioning it as a direct response to a message from the voters.
That's how it's presented in the source, absolutely. The focus was put squarely on performance.
Right.
He added, those who have delivered and continue to deliver will be recognized, but we cannot afford to be complacent. The time for comfort zones is over.
A clear message about performance expectations. Did Malacanang, the presidential palace, add to that?
They did, yeah. Through the palace press officer, Claire Castro. The explanation given was that these resignations give the president the flexibility he needs to, quote, recalibrate the administration.
Recalibrate?
And revamp his team based on that public sentiment, the one expressed in the elections.
And I remember the article mentioning the palace had a pretty sharp message about accountability, too.
Very sharp. The press officer was quoted saying, "There's no place for the lazy and the corrupt in the administration." So, you see, while the mechanism is this courtesy resignation, the underlying message about performance, and maybe even rooting out corruption, is definitely there.
Okay, so these resignations are submitted. Are these 30 or so officials just out immediately?
No, that's another important detail the article points out. They actually stay in their jobs for now. They remain at their posts until their resignations are formally accepted or, until new appointments are made.
And that's presumably to keep the government running smoothly, no gaps.
Exactly. Malacanang was apparently quick to give assurances that government programs, services, all that would continue unhampered during this transition phase.
Right, continuity is key. So how did the officials themselves take this? Being asked en masse for their resignation, the article said there was widespread compliance.
It did. The response, according to Newsline, was largely one of, well, compliance and public expressions of support. This general acceptance is presented as them understanding, or at least accepting, that a shakeup was needed. To meet public expectations and improve performance, especially after the elections.
So they publicly back the president's move.
Many did, yes. Making public statements, often using pretty strong language, affirming their loyalty and the reasons for the reset.
The article pulled out some specific quotes, didn't it? What did some of them say? What stood out?
Yeah, there were several. Finance Secretary Ralph Recto, for instance. He cited his full support, called it a bold decision, and framed it as putting people and country first. He also mentioned the president's heavy burden, which maybe hints at the pressures,
And the Agriculture Secretary, Francisco Tiu Laurel Jr., he also voiced support.
He did, yeah. He supported the president seeking flexibility to respond to the people's clamor, as he put it, conveyed in the polls. Said they needed to recalibrate and move forward with renewed focus.
So similar supportive language.
Yes, but here's where the article adds a really interesting bit of nuance. Despite that supportive statement about the overall move, the source specifically notes that Tiu Laurel, quote, defied the president's judgment regarding his continued role in the team.
Whoa, hang on. So he supported the idea of the reset, but maybe pushed back on whether he should be part of that reset? Is that how you read that?
That's certainly one interpretation based on the phrasing in the article. It suggests that maybe beneath the united front, there were some individual complexities.
Fascinating detail. What about Justice Secretary Jesus Crispin Ramila?
His statement framed it differently. He resigned in line with the president's call for a government devoted solely to public service and free from politics.
Okay, emphasizing service over politics.
Right, and affirming full support for a united and responsive administration.
And then there was the Agrarian Reform Secretary, Conrado Estrella III. He seemed to focus on the president's authority.
He did, very directly. He said all cabinet secretaries serve at the pleasure of the president. It is his prerogative to press the restart button now and then.
That really cuts to the chase, doesn't it? The constitutional reality.
Absolutely. It encapsulates the legal basis for this kind of action.
And the article mentioned lots of others fell in line pretty quickly, too.
Yes. It lists several others who echoed similar sentiments. Compliance, support for the reset. People like Interior Secretary Yandrik Romula, Social Welfare Secretary Rex Gachalian, Foreign Affairs Secretary Enrique Malo, Defense Secretary Gilberto Tidor Jr., Trade Secretary Cristina Roque, and Education Secretary Sonny Angara. All reported as complying promptly.
Okay, so if we pull all this together, what's the main takeaway? What's the big picture the article paints?
Well, the immediate reported outcome is this picture of near total alignment. The entire cabinet, basically, complying with the president's request.
Unified front.
And the stated purpose, repeated by the president, by the palace, is that this is a direct response to the public, to the election results. A move to realign and really boost government performance.
It definitely sends a powerful signal, doesn't it? It's a very public display of unity, at least on the surface, behind the president's agenda.
And it signals a willingness, again, it's outwardly, from these top officials to be held accountable for delivering results.
Right. It's the administration's narrative, their public framing of how they're responding to what they clearly saw as, a negative signal from the voters.
Precisely.
So, stepping back a bit, why does an event like this, a mass request for cabinet resignations in the Philippines, why does that matter to you, our listener, wherever you might be?
Well, I think it offers a really clear, very current example of how executive power works, especially concerning government appointments.
Right.
You see this in many systems, presidential or parliamentary, where cabinet members technically serve at the leader's discretion, at their pleasure, as Secretary Estrella put it.
And it also shows how leaders might react to election results, especially ones that aren't exactly favorable.
Exactly. This bold reset is one strategy an administration can use.
Yeah.
It's an attempt to signal, okay, we heard you, we're responsive, we're making changes, whether that's driven by policy or just politics.
So understanding the mechanics, like this courtesy resignation tool and the public reasons given.
Yeah, it gives you insight into the toolkit leaders have, how they manage their teams, project authority, and try to, recalibrate their standing with the public. It's a real-world look at that interplay between elections, executive power, and what a government says its priorities are.
Okay, so let's quickly recap this deep dive based on that Newsline Philippines piece.
That's good.
Following election results that were described as underwhelming, President Marcos Jr. asked for courtesy resignations from his entire cabinet.
Right, framing it as a bold reset.
Aimed at meeting public expectations, emphasizing accountability, performance.
And the officials, by and large, complied, publicly backing the president's move and the need to recalibrate.
Which leaves us with maybe a final thought to chew on. Building on that idea that cabinet members serve at the pleasure of the president, what does this kind of mass request for resignations explicitly tied to election results really signal? Not just about accountability upwards to the president, but about the administration's perceived accountability to the people they're supposed to be serving. Is this a genuine shift towards that, or is it more of a strategic political maneuver? Something to think about.